Implementation and management of an e-learning campaign. To create an e-learning campaign, go to the Manage Campaigns section. This is a view where you can see the list, progress, and status of all active and historical e-learning campaigns. To create an e-learning campaign, first click on the Launch a New e-learning campaign button. In this model window, you need to specify the name of the campaign as well as pick the e-learning courses that will be taught in this campaign. Next, let's go through the campaign creation process. In the first step, you can refine the campaign name in different languages, select the thumbnail, and disconnect languages that users don't need to access. Next is the most important part, campaign type selection. First, let us go through both types of campaigns. The one-off event type of campaign is the simpler type of campaign, with one specific start time and deadline date by which all students must complete their learning. If the student has not completed the learning by the deadline, the learning status for that student will switch to missed deadline. So we indicate the deadline as well as the minimum learning period. This option allows students added to the learning close to the deadline to be allowed to provide an additional learning period if the remaining study time is less than the minimum learning period. In this way, the deadline will be extended for a particular student to allow them to study within the minimum learning period. The field number of repeated tests allows to determine the number of times a student may fail the test before it will be necessary to repeat the theoretical learning. With the Allow Access to Completed Learning Materials option, you can restrict or allow access to e-learning materials after e-learning has been completed or deadline expired. Now back to the second type of campaign, the recertification campaign. This type of campaign allows for a continuous process of recertification of students' knowledge. This means that upon completion of the learning, the student will be awarded a learning certificate with a certain validity period of the acquired knowledge. After this period has elapsed, the student will have to retake the same e-learning to restore his/her certification. In this way, the relearning of essential knowledge, such as labor safety, IT security, or others, can be effectively managed on an ongoing basis. The certification validity period of the certificate will determine how long the student's acquired knowledge will be valid and will be reflected in this document. The minimum completion term will determine how long the student will be expected to study in case of repeated studies. Avoiding validity of certificate allows to determine whether the student will have to retake this learning before or after the previous certification has expired. For example, if this knowledge certification is critical, it is recommended that you use the Yes option and ensure that you avoid periods when the student does not have a valid learning certificate. If you believe that recertification would be sufficient if the student simply passed the test, select the Yes option next to the Include Pre-certification starting with the second recertification setting. Now let's go back to the one-time event campaign and continue creating the campaign. In the Learning Activities view, you can add one or more learning activities from the e-learning courses of your choice, as well as add or remove courses. After adding activities, they appear in the table and you can make the following settings to provide a specific learning schedule. First, it can be determined whether the activity is mandatory. If the activity turns out to be optional, then the student will be able to complete the e-learning campaign and get a certification document without even starting this activity. A pre-test may also be applied. This option will allow students to pass the test immediately, and the theoretical part of the learning will become optional. This is recommended in cases where the students are relearning a specific content. It is also possible to define a strict learning sequence. Now let's add students. This can be done by adding them in groups or one at a time. Click the Add User Groups button and add departments or by user filters. If you add the wrong ones, don't worry, save your campaign as a draft and you'll be able to remove them later on. Let's move on to the Notifications section. In this section, you can set notifications that will be delivered to students at specific learning times. For example, the regular reminder will be delivered 60 days before the end of the e-learning campaign and will continue to be delivered every 15 days. There are two types of post-learning notifications: general e-learning kickoff notifications. If necessary, you can add any custom email template to this list. If you wish to learn how to create it, go to our learning video, Email Notification System. Let's continue with the certificate step. The certificate is a document that will be generated as soon as the student has completed the learning campaign. It will be available to him in his profile at the specific campaign, or will be emailed to him if the specific notification was activated in the previous step. The certificate may bear any name, and the text before and after it can be adapted to your needs, as well as the period of validity. This is what it will look like. Now we have finished setting up our campaign and can run or save it as a draft. Let's save as a draft and return to the list of learning campaigns. Here we see it below. Let's launch it. It is now available to all users who have been listed as students in this campaign. If the Learning Manager has a student account, it can be checked immediately as follows. Switch the role to Student and we can see the list of students' learning campaigns. All campaigns and their statuses will appear here. When you view the learning campaign, you can see a list of learning activities and statuses. As you can see, this activity is optional, but you can take the test right away. Let's return to the Learning Manager's environment. The Learning Manager can follow the progress of the learning campaign by viewing it. A number of different statistical graphs will be available here. And if necessary, even more detailed data can be obtained by exporting the statistics to Microsoft Excel file. By going to the Students section, it is possible to review the progress of individual students, as well as move on to the profiles of these students. It is possible to delete a student from the learning campaign if he or she has not yet started learning. Otherwise, the student cannot be unenrolled.